Let's be real. People are great at lying. They'll hide their flaws, hype up their strengths, and put on a perfect act, even around the people they claim to love. You never really know what your partner is hiding until they slip up or decide to tell you. But Gong Giju? She doesn't have that problem. Our girl can see the truth for herself. Whatever someone's trying to keep secret, she can see it for herself, right before her eyes. Gong Giju wasn't known for much. She was just a regular college student with terrible luck in dating and a long list of bad boyfriends. But things started shifting one day. On her way to playwriting class, she paused outside the door. From inside, she heard two girls talking. Apparently, they are her friends. At first, their voices didn't sound harsh. But then came the sting. One of them called her a fool. They said Giju kept entering competitions, winning them, and then handing over every bit of her prize money to her boyfriend. One of the girls even added that she had gone to the same high school as Giju, and this wasn't anything new. Giju's track record spoke for itself. In high school, she helped her boyfriend by writing his college application. In college, she dated someone who was secretly two-timing her. Each time, the story was the same. They used her until they had no more need for her, then left. The girls inside the classroom finished their little gossip session by agreeing on one thing. Gong Giju was just pitiful. And the wild part? Giju heard every single word from outside. Yet, she didn't react. She simply went ahead and sent her latest prize money to her boyfriend, like always. Another of her friends eventually came along, startling her a bit. Everyone expected her to share her secret competition strategies. But, let's be real, no strategies came out of that discussion. After what Giju had heard, all she wanted to do was go home. But her friend Sansoon wasn't having it. She made sure she dragged her along with her into the classroom. Finally, all four friends were seated on the table. Giju asked what exactly she needed to know. Instead of her winning strategy, the other girls only wanted to know one thing: what she was planning to do with her prize money. Giju told them she wanted to host a department dinner. The room didn't buy it. They snickered and mocked her, saying the money would end up with her boyfriend anyway. Choi Mary, one of the louder girls, pushed further. She asked how long she thought this relationship would even last. And then Mary noticed something unusual: a ring on Giju's finger. Even her genuine friend looked shocked. Was it a couple ring with her boyfriend? Of course, the first question was about the brand because it looked unique. Giju explained that she had bought it herself from a street vendor because she thought it looked pretty. Nobody believed her. Even her friend gave her a suspicious look, convinced her boyfriend Jimin had told her to get it. Trying to defend herself and Jimin, she insisted that the idea was hers and Jimin was actually a nice guy. But the way she defined nice only made things worse. She said he was nice because he read a lot of books. The others couldn't hold back their laughter. To them, it explained everything about her poor taste in men. Giju doubled down, mentioning research that claimed people who read a lot usually had higher emotional intelligence. Her classmates shook their heads. They teased her, asking if she even had real standards when it came to dating. Then Mary cut in again, bold as ever. She said some people were simply born to give. And Gong Giju was clearly one of them. That remark pushed Giju over the edge. She slammed the table, ready to fight back. But before things escalated, another girl ran into the room with an announcement. A senior named Hale wanted to treat everyone to dinner. The classroom exploded in excitement. Chairs flipped, books scattered, and the girls bolted out of the room faster than anyone could blink. Giju stood frozen, stunned by the sudden emptiness. She followed outside, only to see her classmates crowding around a tall senior. They surrounded him like he was a celebrity. It turns out this was Hale, the legendary senior. Professors always praised him not just for his talent, but for his good character, too. On top of that, he was undeniably handsome. Her friends sighed in admiration, saying he was the kind of guy who should be the standard for any boyfriend. But Giju wasn't having it. She insisted her own boyfriend was also good and he treated her well. Her friend didn't budge. She reminded her that with that cheap ring on her finger, nobody's gonna believe her story about Jimin. On her way home, Giju replayed all the comments in her head. She couldn't understand why people disliked her ring or spoke poorly about her boyfriend. Lost in thought, she wasn't paying attention to where she was going. She bumped into someone. Fortunately, it wasn't a stranger, it was Jimin himself. Jimin looked worried when he noticed how upset Giju was. She was surprised to see him there, but he explained that he had come because she sent him money again. He said he had planned to scold her for it, but after seeing her sadness, the thought of scolding her didn't matter anymore. He even claimed he wanted to return the money and talk things over, but now all he cared about was knowing what had happened. It became clear that Giju wasn't as unaffected by the girl's words as she had tried to appear. She asked him if he also thought she was stupid. She remembered how back when her second trashy boyfriend dumped her, she had been in a very dark place. It was Jimin who had stood by her, and now she was just trying to repay him. Since childhood, Giju had hated the idea of being indebted to anyone. Whenever someone did one thing for her, she felt the need to give back tenfold. It sounded like a good trait, but in reality, it was what ruined her relationships. People would go from being thankful to simply taking advantage of her. But Jimin seemed different. He reminded her that they were in a relationship, not strangers. Helping each other was natural. She didn't need to repay him. Those words touched her deeply, and she fell for him even more. After comforting her, Jimin added that he had also stopped by her parents' shop to help out. He said he wanted to do anything he could for them. Giju was touched and believed that he truly valued her love. She scolded him lightly, telling him not to visit too often since he still had auditions to focus on. He sighed and admitted that his last audition hadn't gone well. He worried about disappointing her. Giju playfully held his face and told him it wasn't his fault, but the company's, encouraging him until he laughed again. She knew how much he was struggling to chase his dream of becoming an actor, despite his parents' objections. That was why she had been entering so many competitions, using her prize money as a way to support him and show her love. Later, the two returned home. When they realized there was no food, Jimin decided to go out and buy her favorite meal. She offered to go with him, but he insisted she rest. To her, Jimin felt different from everyone she had met. She even thought about giving him more of herself. She went online to buy lingerie, planning to surprise him during their upcoming 100-day anniversary trip. She wanted him to be happy, and she was ready to give him her first time. While shopping, she heard a sudden vibration. Jimin had left his phone behind. Curious, she picked it up. What she saw broke her heart. A message from Jimin's friends popped up. She opened the group chat only to find that the men had been mocking her. Every picture and message she sent him had been forwarded to them. They laughed at her behind her back. Her hands began to tremble as she read their cruel words. At that moment, Jimin returned home. He walked in, smiling, carrying food, but froze when he saw his phone in her hand. The smile vanished instantly. He dropped the food without a thought, only focused on consoling her. He tried to convince her it wasn't what she thought, but Giju had reached her limit. She stood up to leave. Jimin grabbed her hand, refusing to let go. He blurted out a flimsy excuse that he was only trying to show off. All his friends were moving forward while he wasn't, so he needed to look like he was. Thankfully, Giju wasn't falling for Jimin's excuses anymore. She told him bragging wasn't about letting his friends insult her or spreading her private pictures. He kept apologizing, insisting she was the only thing he had to brag about. But Giju wasn't having it. She reminded him that he should be focusing on auditions, not bragging about her. If he had any real plans, he wouldn't be living such an aimless life. If he lacked skills, then he should at least find another way to survive. Inside, she thought it was pathetic that she had ever trusted him. And then came the breaking point. As soon as she finished, Jimin slapped her across the face. The blow was so strong that she fell down to the floor. Giju froze, stunned. She couldn't believe it. After everything she had gone through, after all the trashy men she had dated, here was another one who had shown his true colors. Ignoring his fake pitiful expression, she got up and turned to leave. But Jimin chased after her, trying to change her mind. With tears in her eyes, Giju stopped. She told him everyone had warned her not to trust him, but she still did. She thought he would be different. She called him a jerk, remembering how happy she was when they got their matching rings. In anger, she pulled off the ring and threw it away. She told him it was over. Jimin didn't agree. He grabbed her roughly, refusing to let go. They struggled, and in the chaos, he shoved her down the stairs. Giju's heart sank. As she lay there in despair, she thought about her life. Why was she always this unlucky? Why did she keep ending up with trashy men? Even after years of mistakes, nothing had changed. Her tears fell as she wished desperately that someone had taught her to recognize men like this. Maybe then she wouldn't have been such a fool. Somewhere out of sight, the ring that she had thrown away glimmered faintly. Time passed. When Giju opened her eyes again, she found herself in a hospital bed. Confused and weak, she looked around. And there he was, Jimin. He rushed over, pretending to be worried. He knelt, apologizing over and over, putting on his usual pitiful act. But this time something was different. Giju stared in shock, not because of his apology, but because pink boxes had appeared floating around his head. She read them carefully. They weren't random words. They were reviews. Still, she wondered if she was dreaming, or maybe hit her head too hard when she fell down the stairs. Because now, above everyone's head, pink stars floated with words beside them. Her name was even among them, displaying things she herself often said. The other names there were also familiar. They belonged to Jimin's ex-girlfriends. What was going on? Jimin, of course, had no clue that his secrets were exposed. He grabbed her hands again, begging her not to break up. He said what happened wasn't that serious, blaming her for making him angry. According to him, pushing her was just a mistake. Giju recoiled, disturbed by how quickly he twisted the story. She pushed his hands away. And then she noticed something. On her finger, something sparkled. It was the ring. She froze, confused. Hadn't she thrown it away yesterday? Jimin proudly said he had put the ring back on for her. In his mind, everything she did yesterday was just a fit of anger. Giju stared at him, asking if he really believed she only wanted to break up because she was angry. Of course, he didn't answer. Instead, he mumbled something about looking for the doctor and ran out. Classic move, selfish to the very end. Left alone, Giju felt more frustrated than ever. But her bigger worry was the pink boxes still floating in her vision. At first, she thought it was because of her injuries. Yet no matter how hard she rubbed her eyes, the boxes remained. They looked like reviews. She remembered the ones she had already seen, and sure enough, these were the same. Reviews of Jimin. Just by reading them, she could picture his behavior. The reviews even confirmed it. This wasn't the first time he had hit women. It was his habit. She wanted to ask him directly, but couldn't. Instead, she decided to step outside. That was when her friend Kim Sang-sun showed up, barging into the room like a storm. She nearly gave Giju a scare, but at least she was alive and well. Sang-sun quickly asked if she was hurt. Giju hushed her, reminding her this was still a hospital. Sang-sun rolled her eyes and explained the rumor going around that Giju had fallen from the roof and rolled down the stairs. Giju was just about to correct her when she noticed something shocking. On Sang-sun's head floated the same pink boxes. Her friend had them too. These were Sang-sun's WAV reviews. Curious, Giju read them. One review complained about a breakup caused by a public event. Another said Sang-sun broke things off because he asked for premarital chastity. Giju wanted to confirm if they were real, so she asked her friend about them. To her shock, everything matched. Sang-sun admitted the reviews were true, but then stopped, suspicious. She demanded to know how Giju had this information. Before Giju could explain, Sang-sun noticed the mark on her face. She frowned. According to the rumors, Giju had fallen backwards, so why was her face bruised? The truth was written all over the wound. She had been hit. Right then, the abuser himself walked in. Jimin froze the moment he heard Sang-sun's pointed question. He panicked and quickly claimed he had an audition to run to and bolted out. Another weak escape. Sang-sun wanted to chase him down, but Giju stopped her. She confessed everything. As expected, her friend was furious, wishing Giju had told her sooner so she could have shut his mouth shut herself. But Giju told her it didn't matter. She had already broken up with him.
Sungsun wasn't convinced. She pointed out that Giju was still wearing his ring. Realizing it, Giju quickly took the ring off. That's when she made a startling discovery. Without the ring, the pink reviews vanished. When she put it back on, they reappeared. She tested it several times, off, on. Each time, the reviews flickered in and out. Sungsun just sat there watching in disbelief, wondering if her friend had completely lost it. Terrified, Giju threw the ring away, but then she panicked, running after it again. With the ring off, she saw nothing. With it on, the reviews came back. She clutched it, wondering what on earth this thing was. Why could she suddenly see these strange windows? Then she remembered, last night in her despair, she had wished for a way to identify trash. It seemed that wish had come true. Beside her, Sungsun was spooked. She backed away, muttering that she understood Giju's pain, but she looked completely crazy yelling at a ring. Honestly, Giju thought she might be crazy too. How else could this be real? Soon after she was discharged from the hospital, holding the mysterious ring tightly, she decided there was only one place she could go for answers: the shop where she bought it. On her way, Giju ran into none other than her ex, Jimin, the human definition of scum. He tried convincing her she had no reason to break up with him. After all, he had apologized, hadn't he? Giju wondered if she had been possessed back then to ever fall for his act. Jimin claimed he couldn't live without her, and honestly, he wasn't right. He literally couldn't survive without her paying his rent and beating him. She pointed this out. Predictably, he got defensive. Knowing she had to be more forceful, Giju asked him if paying his next rent would be enough to buy her freedom from his cozy. That hit his pride. Jimin raised his hand, ready to slap her again. Giju shut her eyes, bracing for it. But the slap never came. Instead, she heard a loud thud. Opening her eyes, she saw that Jimin had crashed into someone, dropping his package in the process. And that someone turned out to be none other than Senior Hale, the tall and ridiculously handsome star of her department. Jimin tried to keep up his tough guy act for a second, but one look at Hale standing in front of him was enough. He panicked, pretended to take a fake phone call, and bolted. Not before muttering that they were just lucky he had somewhere to go. Classic coward exit. That left Giju alone with her senior. She noticed his broken package on the ground and promised to replace it, but Hale didn't seem bothered by that. He was more concerned about the situation he had just witnessed. He even offered to walk her home in case Jimin came back. At that moment, Giju remembered Sungsun's constant praise of Hale. Skilled, good character, excellent reputation, and yes, easy on the eyes. Seeing him now, she had to admit the rumors checked out.
But just as she was starting to think maybe he really was perfect, something popped up that flipped everything upside down. His love review. Giju couldn't believe it. Sang-soon, who never ended things well, still had a rating of 3.5. Even Jimin, the abusive loser, sat at 2.0. So how on earth did the perfect senior have a rating that low? And the rating? A shocking 0.5. Curiosity got the better of her. She stepped closer to check the reviews, and what she saw nearly floored her. Whatever was written there, it was bad enough that she couldn't even look him in the eye anymore. She quickly handed him his box back and promised she'd replace it. Haeil smiled and said he knew her. Before she could panic, he explained he'd seen her name on banners all over campus. Then he introduced himself properly, and they shook hands. Still, he was clearly concerned about what had just happened with Jimin. Giju tried to brush it off, assuring him Jimin was just an ex, but inside she was dying of embarrassment. Haeil didn't seem convinced. He spotted the ring on her finger and told her to take care of her own business first. She scrambled to cover herself, saying she was just passing by and checking out the toy store nearby. Right, because nearly getting slapped by your ex in public is such a normal stop on the way to shop for toys. She knew if she admitted the truth, that she and Jimin had bought couple rings here, she'd look like a complete fool. Before she could dig herself deeper, Hale's friends arrived, and he left with them. Giju knew it must have looked ridiculous. Here she was, wearing a couple's ring while swearing Jimin was her ex. But she didn't have time to dwell on it. She needed to figure out what was going on with this ring. So she went straight to the shop where she'd bought it. To her shock, the owner denied ever selling such a ring. Even when she insisted she had bought it just last week, he said he didn't remember. She left the store even more confused. What was happening? The shop denied the ring, Jimin had the same one, but only she could see these reviews. Were the love reviews really visible only to her? Still rattled, she headed to her parents' shop. And the moment she stepped inside, she spotted an old neighborhood uncle. Of course, his love reviews appeared immediately. And let's just say what she discovered about his fetishes was disturbing. After the neighborhood uncle fiasco, things didn't get any better. The next review Giju saw belonged to the local hair salon owner, and let's just say his high libido was not something she ever wanted to know. When her parents showed up soon after, Giju couldn't take it anymore. The last thing she wanted was to see her own parents' exes rated in pink boxes. She bolted. Back at school, she was drained. A whole week of seeing love reviews everywhere was driving her crazy. It was just too much information. And of course, the school's so-called perfect senior wasn't helping. Haeyul walked in, waving at her like they were best friends. Everyone gushed about how perfect he was. But Giju wasn't fooled. She knew his rating, and it was ugly. Even though she tried to hide, Haeyul still came over and placed a drink on her table. He claimed he bought it for everyone, but funny enough, nobody else had one. Naturally, all the girls stared at her like hungry wolves. Panicking, Giju told him to take it back. He ignored her, of course. And just when she thought the day couldn't get worse, her phone buzzed. It was Jimin, the little coward himself. He claimed he didn't run away. No, he just left because he'd passed his audition. According to him, he was about to be famous, so he didn't need her anymore. Giju actually laughed. Just like Haeyul, Jimin also had a shiny reputation, but both of them, nothing but fakes. Still, she wasn't done with him. Even if she couldn't get back the rent money she'd wasted, she could at least squeeze her hospital bills out of him. No more being the fool. She marched to his department, arriving just in time to overhear his little performance. Jimin was playing the victim, telling everyone she had been violent when he mentioned breaking up. Jiju's jaw dropped. He was the one who hit her, but now he had flipped the script. The boys around him nodded along, calling her a psycho. They said she dated weirdos, so what else could they expect? Jimin smirked and added he maybe shouldn't have dumped her since she had no one else. His friends rushed to assure him it wasn't his fault. To make it worse, one of them compared her to her first ex, who had also lied, calling her a stalker just to dump her. None of this surprised her. Trash recognizes trash. Their ratings said it all. Then Jimin's friends brought up his supposed victory. He had finally gotten into the theater program after applying 10 times. One more audition to go, but he was convinced he'd make it. Now, Giju understood the message he sent. And then came the lowest blow. One of his friends called her a bad luck and then immediately started lusting over her body. Another friend agreed. Both wanted details from Jimin. Thankfully, she'd never given herself to him. Jimin shrugged and said they didn't do a lot, which was a pity. His only regret in dumping her. Then, with zero shame, he pulled out his phone. He hinted he had private pictures of her and said if she begged, maybe he'd take her back. Outside, Giju froze. What was happening? Jimin scrolled, telling his friends he had a few shots. He handed them the phone. They crowded around, laughing and making comments. That was the last straw. Giju stormed inside, snatched the phone and looked. Thankfully, it was just her profile picture, nothing worse. She deleted the entire album on the spot. Then, to top it off, she grabbed the drink Hail had given her and poured it all over Jimin's phone. His friends erupted, accusing her of making a fuss after being violent to poor Jimin. But Giju wasn't backing down. She glared straight at him and demanded to know who gave her the marks on her face. Afraid to being exposed, Jimin yanked her outside and hissed at her not to ruin his reputation. She snapped right back. If he cared so much about his reputation, maybe he shouldn't have gone around hitting women. Jimin laughed in her face. According to him, there was nothing she could do. She couldn't just go around telling people he hit her and pushed her down the stairs, could she? Giju shot back, asking why she couldn't. He laughed again, saying she clearly wasn't smart. Then he spun the whole thing around, claiming that lying about her hitting him was actually his way of helping her. People already thought she was stupid for spending money on him. If they knew he hit her too, she'd never survive the shame. So really, he was protecting her dignity. What kind of twisted logic was that? Absolute nonsense. But Giju froze, blank. She couldn't find words. Jimin smirked, satisfied. He warned her not to make things worse and bragged that he was too busy to waste time on her. Then he walked away, leaving her standing there alone. She felt sick. She thought maybe, at least in private, he'd show some remorse. But no, the reviews were right. He really was just scum. That's when an idea hit her. The reviews mentioned 2 of his exes. If she could find them, maybe she'd finally get the answers she needed. Fired up, she slammed her hand against the wall. The loud noise startled someone nearby. A boy leaning there, smoking. It was Hale. He had been there the whole time. One small sound from him made her spin around, panicked. She was mortified. Of all people, why did she have to keep running into him in the worst moments? Jimin really was a curse. She begged him not to tell anyone. But instead of reassuring her, Hale calmly said her words alone weren't enough to buy his silence. And just like that, the 2 of them ended up in a fancy restaurant. Giju had no idea how she got there. She never expected Hale to be the type to pull something like this. She tried to eat, but he kept staring and smiling. He said he'd been trying to talk to her, leaving her stunned. He wanted to know why she never made eye contact. His words made her choke. When she asked when, he replied, even now, she wasn't looking at him. Well, could you blame her? It wasn't her fault. The reviews around him were way too much. She finally glanced up, and sure enough, every single one was explicit. Review after review praising how good he was in bed. Filthy, detailed, and impossible to ignore. Embarrassing didn't even begin to cover it. She considered taking the ring off just to make them disappear. But then, she noticed something. A name. One that was painfully familiar. It was Jimin's ex. The review was hidden and Giju had to figure out how to read it. That's when she discovered something new. She could actually move the reviews with her hands. From Hale's perspective, it must have looked ridiculous. She sat there waving her arms in the air like a lunatic. But to her, it was progress. She shuffled the reviews around until she found what she needed. And then the real shock hit. The 2 exes she'd been looking for, both were here. Both were linked to Jimin and Hale. So they shared the same ex-girlfriends. That meant the girls had to be students at their college. And if that was true, Hale might have their contacts. Lost in thought, Giju didn't notice she was leaning forward, her chest pressing right up against him. It was only when he called her name that she realized she had her hands on his chest and her chest in his face. Mortified, she shot up like an Olympic high jumper. She apologized, stammering that she had been distracted. He told her it was fine and asked what she was thinking about. And Giju decided to be honest. She asked if he knew someone named Ga Young Song
or Kim Ji-hae. Giju wanted to reach out to Jimin's exes, but she didn't have their contacts. Hae-il casually said he knew them. Her eyes lit up, and she asked if he could give her their numbers. That's when he smiled. Not his usual handsome smile, but a devilish one.
He told her that if she wanted those numbers, she'd have to do what he wanted. Not even his own number, someone else's. Classic power move. Giju complained in her head, but she didn't have a choice. She promised she'd do whatever he asked, at least until this mess was handled. A week later came Jimin's big moment, his last audition. The campus buzzed with excitement. The famous director Moon himself had shown up, and everyone was sure this meant Jimin would succeed. Some students even thanked him, saying they never thought they'd get to see Director Moon in person. Naturally, Jimin souped it all up. Smug didn't even begin to cover it. He strutted around, acting like the next star already. When it was his turn, he took the stage, introduced himself, and prepared to perform. Director Moon was paying attention. But then, Jimin noticed Giju standing in the shadows, watching. His scummy little brain twisted it instantly. He thought she was there to witness his rise, to see the boy she looked down on become amazing. Fueled by his own ego, he began performing. The audience seemed into it, and he was nearly at the final stretch. Except he never got to finish, because right then, two girls stormed into the auditorium. His exes, Song Ga-young and Kim Ji-hae. And let's be clear, they were not there for a friendly visit. Jimin's jaw dropped. The students whispered, wondering who these girls were and why they had barged in. The two exes mocked Director Moon, ridiculing his judgment for considering someone like Jimin. Chaos erupted. Staff tried to block them, confused about who had even let them inside. Backstage, Hae-il proudly dangled a key. Mystery solved. Director Moon was furious, demanding to know what was going on. Giju stepped up beside him, calm but firm. She told him this was exactly what he'd face every day if he accepted Jimin. By then, the exes had reached the stage. Jimin, still pretending to have control, demanded to know what they were doing. Ji-hae smiled sweetly, said they just came to say hi, then slammed her fist right into his face. She wasn't just any girl. She had been president of her college's taekwondo club. Stunned, Jimin blurted that athletes weren't supposed to hit people. Ji-hae shot back that she hadn't touched him when he first beat her while he was drunk because she was an athlete. But now she'd quit sports. Translation? No rules holding her back anymore. She raised her fist again, but Seong-yae stopped her. Not because she wanted peace, but because she wanted in. She scolded Jimin for never fixing his habit of hitting women. Jimin relaxed a bit, thinking she was weak. Then she revealed her nails. Metal claws, filed for 5 hours straight. Jimin's smirk vanished. She slashed into him. Seong-yae is a jewelry and metal craft major and nail artist. Together, the two exes launched into him, fists and claws flying. The audience panicked, worried it might spiral completely out of control. Jimin scrambled up, furious. He demanded to know if they'd really come just for this. He told them to separate public and private matters. That's when Giju finally stepped out of the shadows. She told Jimin he should have been the one to set an example instead of mistreating his ex-girlfriend. Then she made her point clear. She was there for one reason, to expose what kind of person he really was. She turned to Director Moon, reminding him that Moonlight Theater was famous, and every member's reputation spread online even before debut. She brought up past scandals, pointing out how picking the wrong people once brought backlash to the company. If Jimin was accepted, history would repeat itself. Because in this industry, popularity wasn't just talent, it was reputation. Director Moon prided himself on being cautious. For him, an actor's personal life mattered at just as much as their talent. So Giju asked straight out, did he really plan to cast someone as problematic as Jimin?
Of course, Jimin wasn't about to just stand there and let her accuse him. He quickly turned it around, saying it was all made up. He claimed he had always dreamed of being an actor, so he'd been careful with his personal life. According to him, his exes were just bitter and wanted revenge. His friends backed him up too. They told the director that Giju was the real problem, that she'd turned violent after he broke up with her. Giju was stunned. How had the story flipped this badly? Jimin knew exactly what he was doing. Director Moon had faced malicious rumors during his own debut, and Jimin played on that. He said he was in the same situation, just an innocent victim. It worked. Giju froze as Jimin smiled, convinced he had outsmarted her. He bowed dramatically, asking the director to be fair and give him a chance.
Director Mun listened carefully, then said he had heard both sides. He emphasized how important it was for an aspiring actor to join a theater troupe. Mun nodded, then turned to Giju. He scolded her for storming in without proof. Being an actor, he said, wasn't just a dream, it was survival. Whatever issues she had with Jimin, it was unfair to drag them here, especially without evidence. And then, to her horror, he was about to announce Jimin's acceptance. Jimin already had a mischievous smirk on his face, like his whole scheme had come to life. That's when Giju spoke up. She asked if evidence was all he needed. Then she pulled out her phone. On the screen was a video of Jimin threatening her after she caught him trash-talking her to his friends. His voice was clear as day, warning her not to speak out about him hitting her. The room fell silent. Jimin's face turned pale. He stammered, asking when she had recorded it. She smirked and told him to deny it if he could. Then she asked Director Mun if this was enough proof. Flashback. A week earlier at the restaurant, Haeil had asked why she wanted the ex's numbers. Was she planning revenge? Because he had another way to help. Then he slid his phone across. He had secretly recorded her argument with Jimin before. He thought it might come in handy. He admitted he acted on his own, apologized for not telling her, but pointed out that Jimin's violence wasn't a one-time thing, even offered to delete the video if it was her wish. Of course, she told him he wouldn't need to. Afterwards, Giju had shown the video to Jimin's exes. The plan was simple. They'd cause a scene at his audition, and if that didn't work, she'd release the video. She nodded in agreement. That was the plan. She reminded them that Director Mun valued reputation above all else. Just the chaos of an interruption would hurt Jimin's chances. Seong was concerned, as their plan could hurt Jimin's aspirations as an aspiring actor. But the girls were curious, though. How did she even know Jimin had hit them? They had never told anyone. Well, she has an unexpected superpower now, thanks to him. Seong hesitated. She didn't want to stir up rumors or reopen old wounds. She wanted it buried. But Giju couldn't let it go. She had seen the reviews Jimin left about them. They were crystal clear. He didn't hit by accident. He hit one because she was timid, and the other because she refused to compromise her principles. Trash, through and through. Giju told the girls that Jimin was never going to change if they let things slide. He could keep playing the victim only because they were too embarrassed and scared to speak up. She remembered the first time he hit her. The sting of pain, the betrayal, the shock, all still fresh in her mind. She never thought she'd be slapped by anyone, let alone a boyfriend. She warned them that if Jimin's career took off, they'd have to see his face everywhere. Their pain would only grow. That's why they couldn't let the truth be buried. She promised she didn't want them to suffer anymore, and she would do whatever it took to help them. Back in the present, Jimin lost control. He lunged at her, ready to hit her again, but then he froze. Everyone was watching. Director Mun's voice cut through the silence. He said he'd remember Jimin's name because there was no chance, not by luck or mistake, that Jimin would ever join their troupe. As Director Mun walked out, Jimin turned on Giju in rage. He shouted that she had ruined everything, that he had worked so hard only for her to steal his opportunity. He grabbed her roughly. Giju, stunned, asked if he really believed this was her fault. Did he not see that all the horrible things he had done had finally caught up to him? He sneered, poking her forehead. He said she had no right to lecture him. He called her stubborn, selfish, the worst mistake of his life. He lifted his hand to poke her again, but this time someone grabbed his fingers and bent them back. Haeil. He stood there, calm but sharp, warning Demon never to lay a hand on Giju again. Jimin growled that Haeil had no right to interfere and demanded to be released. Before it escalated, Giju stopped Haeil. She told Jimin she didn't care what he said. He could spend his whole life blaming others, but he had no right to blame her. She added that even from someone like him, she had learned a lesson. Karma always comes back. Trash like him wasn't something to hold on to. It was something to crush and throw away. Days passed, but the incident in the auditorium was still the hot topic. Students couldn't believe their beloved Jimin had shown that side of himself. With his leave of absence during his final year, his acting career was basically over. Of course, Giju was not spared from gossip. People whispered about her habit of choosing trashy men. Some admired her courage for exposing him in front of director Mun. Others said she was wrong to drag something so petty into the public eye. But Giju didn't care. She didn't regret it. If not for the reviews, maybe she would have kept quiet. But now that she could see the truth, silence wasn't an option. Part of her wanted to throw the ring away. It reminded her too much of Jimin. But then she wondered, without it, how could she keep seeing people's love reviews? Now she had a plan. She would use the ring to filter out the trash and find someone truly worth it. Not what she thought was good, but who the reviews said was good. That way, she could finally have the perfect relationship. She told herself she wouldn't even look at people with low ratings. She knew better. So why was she currently lying tangled up with a certain topless senior, the same senior with some of the worst reviews she'd ever seen?
To explain that, we need to rewind about an hour. On her way home, Giju was cornered by one of her playwriting classmates. The girl wanted to know when she planned to treat the team to a meal for winning the award. The girl wanted it today. She added that a rumor was spreading that anyone she dated was doomed, and it would be a perfect opportunity to clear her name. Before Giju could answer, her phone buzzed. A delivery notification. Her package had just been dropped off at her door. And not just any package, the sexy lingerie set she had ordered for her 100-day trip with Jimin. Her blood ran cold. She wasn't in the mood to talk to anyone anymore. Without a word, she bolted, ignoring her teammate completely. She needed to grab that package before anyone else saw it. Back at her apartment, panic hit. The package wasn't there. She checked the front step, the corners, even the little ledge by the door. Nothing. She cursed herself for buying something like that for a scumbag like Jimin. And then she spotted the problem. Her unit number was 401, but she had written 402 by mistake. Brilliant. Now her sexy lingerie set had been delivered straight to someone else's house. Dreading the worst, she marched to 402. No box outside. She searched everywhere, even peeked into the socket by the door. Still nothing, which meant the neighbor had probably taken it in. She nearly had a breakdown. Who just grabs a box without checking the name? Her only comfort was that at least the neighbor wouldn't know what was inside unless they opened it. With no choice left, she rang the bell. And that's when the door opened to reveal her college senior, Haeil, shirtless, dripping wet from the shower. Giju's brain short-circuited. Why was he here? Why was he shirtless? And more importantly, why wasn't he shirtless more often? Okay, that last part was me. Haeil looked surprised too. He asked why she was at his place. Giju tried to respond, but her brain had turned into static. Seeing her flustered, he smirked and asked if he had to stand outside like this. Then he invited her in. Inside, she sat stiff as a board, praying he hadn't opened the package yet. Her eyes darted around until she spotted it, the box, half hidden by a table. Meanwhile, Haeil casually wandered around still shirtless, completely oblivious to the chaos in her head. He asked if she was there because a package had been misdelivered. She stammered out a yes, explaining she lived next door and had written the wrong address. He said a package had indeed arrived and pulled it out. Giju nearly lunged for it, ready to escape, but he lifted it out of reach. He wanted proof it was hers. She insisted it was, but he pulled out his phone. He had ordered something recently too. For all he knew, the box could be his. He told her to show her order details. Of course, she couldn't. How was she supposed to explain she'd ordered lingerie? When she refused, he suggested the obvious. They open the box and check. Giju nearly fainted from embarrassment. She tried to stop him, but in her panic, she shoved too hard. They both slipped and fell on his couch. When the dust settled, she found herself lying right on his bare chest. Haeil grinned and teased her for being so direct. She scrambled up, red-faced, apologizing. Her nightmare got worse when he glanced at the underwear scattered on the floor and repeated the line, direct. Mortified, Giju rushed around, grabbing her things. She insisted she didn't normally wear things like that. It was just for a special event. Haeil asked if the special event was meant for her ex's taste or maybe a new boyfriend. Giju turned bright red, insisting it wasn't like that. She scooped up her things, desperate to leave. As she reached the door, Haeil casually told her he'd see her later. She froze. Later? He explained there was a notice in the group chat. A dinner was being held to celebrate her award, and she was treating. Her eyes went wide, so it was true. Joy Mari really had posted that announcement. Haeil smirked, reminding her a lot of people were planning to attend, so she should carry her package home safely. Embarrassment burned all the way up her neck. Clutching the box like it was radioactive, she bolted back to her apartment. Alone, Haeil went back to his room. At his desk, his computer screen glowed. Open to Giju's social media page. Pictures of her in different moments were scattered across his table. He leaned back, smiled to himself, and muttered that it was time to get ready. So yeah, turns out Mr. Perfect Sr. had been quietly stalking her.
That evening, the team gathered at the restaurant. Giju squirmed in her seat, uncomfortable. Not because of the bill, though with this crowd it was going to hurt, but because Haeil was sitting directly across from her. The so-called male lead offered to split the cost. After all, it was his fault the turnout had doubled. Apparently, once the girls heard Senior Ho would be at dinner, they all showed up in droves. Giju refused. She insisted she had planned to treat everyone anyway. Secretly, she also felt she owed him. He had given her Jimin's ex's numbers, after all. Paying back favors was her habit. But Haeil wouldn't back down. He insisted on covering it this time, calling it his way of comforting her. The two bickered quietly over who would pay. For Giju, this argument wasn't about money. It was her chance to pull back and end whatever connection was forming between them. Unfortunately, the rest of the class noticed. They teased her, telling her to just let Haeil pay. Mortified, she tensed up. That's when Haeil cut in. He told everyone to stop pressuring her. She was uncomfortable. Helpful? Maybe. But for Giju, it only made things worse. She excused herself and escaped to the bathroom. Leaning against the sink, she tried to steady herself. Being grateful was one thing, but being grateful to a man with a 0.5-star love rating? Completely different. Even Jimin, who literally hid his girlfriends, had a 2.0. So what kind of dirt did Haeil have to deserve something so low? On the outside, he was flawless. But maybe, like Jimin, the inside was rotten. The reviews didn't lie. She made up her mind. She couldn't get close to him. Her plan was simple. Pay the bill quietly and leave before anyone noticed. At the counter, she asked for the check. But before the cashier could calculate, Sangon appeared. She whispered that something had gone down while Giju was gone. Apparently, Choi Mari had wanted to comfort Giju about her failed relationship, but other classmates stopped her, telling her to act like nothing happened. They reminded her of how noisy the whole scandal with Giju's ex had been. Mari argued this time was different. Giju was the victim, unlike before when Pyo had been the victim. Another girl pushed back. Maybe it wasn't true. Maybe Jimin was the victim, just like Pyo. Sangun clenched her fists, ready to snap at them, when Hail cut in. He said Pyo hadn't changed one bit. He had just broken up with his girlfriend again after cheating on her with someone else. Everyone fell silent. Hail added he'd seen Pyo drunk in the street the other day looking for Giju. And though he didn't mention the whole story, he admitted Pyo had asked him to tell her something. Unblock me. Back when Pyo was still trying to play the victim, he had told Giju he'd fix the rumors about her if only she answered his calls. He even said there were no other girls like her, because, in his words, no one else was as gullible. Classy, right? Back to the present. The truth finally clicked for the others. Pyo had been lying all along. He was the obsessive, jealous one, just pretending to be the victim. Hearing this, people actually started to pity Giju. Hail even spoke up, saying she simply had been caught up with the wrong person. Sangun later retold the whole scene to Giju, who was stunned Hail had even defended her. Sangun insisted she should be grateful. If not for him, the others would have gone right back to bad-mouthing her. But Giju couldn't figure it out. Why would Hail help her? Maybe he had some personal beef with Pyo. Her train of thought was cut short when the cashier announced the bill was already settled. She was shocked, asking who cleared it. He pointed out that it was the gentleman in black jacket, Hail. That stopped her cold. He had not only defended her, he paid for everyone's meal. The last thing Giju wanted was to owe him more than she already did. When she returned to the table, a crowd had gathered. One of the club members, Jua, was drunk and loudly confessed her love to Hail. The group whispered nervously, expecting him to embarrass her. But Giju, she wasn't concerned. With his abysmal reviews, she figured he probably entertained confessions all the time. He probably just went out with anyone who showed interest in him. What did it matter? Slipping under the table, she just wanted to grab her bag and leave unnoticed. Then she noticed something odd. Hail's leg was shaking. His hands were clammy, he was sweating bullets, on the verge of a panic attack. For someone with a 0.5-star rating, this wasn't what she expected. He clearly didn't want to accept, but the crowd kept chanting for him to say yes. The girl pressed harder, shoving a bottle into his hand and saying he should drink it if he wanted to date her. Cornered, he reached for it. Giju recalled all the favors he'd done for her and saw this as an opportunity to repay him, a chance to get the burden off her chest. At this point, it was clear he had a hard time saying no. Before he could take the drink from Jua, Giju snatched it from her hands first and drank it. Everyone gasped, especially Jua, who was almost in shock. That was her repayment for all the times he had covered for her. If he couldn't reject the girl outright, she'd do it for him.
Joy Mary demanded to know why Giju interfered. Calmly, Giju said it was because Jua was already too drunk. Jua tried to defend herself, stomping her feet to the ground, claiming she wasn't drunk. Then right on cue, she slurred mid-sentence and passed out in Giju's arms. Giju pointed out how Jua loses her filter when she drinks past her limit. With that, the commotion dissolved and everyone drifted back to their seats. Hail was completely lost for words at this point. Now, it was Giju's turn to be cornered. Sang-sun dramatically raised her hands in the air, asking her to make a wish. She drank on behalf of Hail, and it was tradition to wish for something from him in return. Her classmates crowded around, urging her to wish for something. But she couldn't exactly say her wish was to get as far away from Hail as possible. Thinking quickly, she suggested he treats everyone to ice cream shots to sober up a little since most of them were almost wasted. Perfect distraction. She would go home immediately after he left to buy them. Or so she thought. Instead, she ended up stuck walking with Hail himself, betrayed by her own friend Sing-sun, who had conveniently sold her out. On the way, he asked why she drank on his behalf. She shrugged, saying he seemed stuck, and since she already owed him, she figured it was the least she could do. Hail smirked. He teased that the number of times he had helped her couldn't possibly be repaid by just that. Seeing Hail joke around again, Giju felt relieved. His nervousness had passed, and he was back to his usual self. Still, she couldn't help but wonder why he'd been so shaken earlier. He was known for receiving countless confessions. Did he just not like that particular girl? Or maybe public confessions embarrassed him? Hayeol explained that it wasn't so simple. For him, rejecting was the hard part because it meant he'd have to turn someone down. That confused her. Accepting or rejecting was his choice, wasn't it? That's when it hit her. The reason he had so many ex-girlfriends was because he never refused at all. He accepted confessions from people he didn't even like just because he felt sorry for them. To Giju, this was ridiculous, a waste of people's time and emotions. Hayeol admitted he knew it was wrong, but she cut in. It wasn't only wrong for the other person, it was also painful for him. Forcing himself to date someone out of pity meant he got nothing in return. At least the other person had the joy of dating someone they liked. He was left empty. Hayeol blinked, a little stunned. Sometimes this girl was surprised him with how sharp she was. She was nothing like the impression he first had of her. He thought back to the first time he had seen her. It was at her family's restaurant. He had stopped by for a meal, phone pressed to his ear as he talked with his professor about Giju's award-winning play. The professor wanted to know if he knew her, and of course he didn't, because he had taken a leave of absence. Coincidentally, his eyes caught her name on the stand where her parents had displayed her awards. At that moment, she had quietly served a homeless man their special dish. But as soon as she left, the old man plucked a strand of hair from his head, dropped it into the bowl, and kicked up a scene, claiming the food was dirty. He refused to pay. Giju rushed over, apologizing. She told him he didn't need to pay at all, they could just come back another time and they'd give him another bowl. The man, flustered, struggled for words, and as if overcome by guilt, he ran off. And instead of feeling relief, she looked worried, convinced he was uncomfortable or unwell. Her worry didn't last long, though. Her mother stormed up and smacked her on the back. She scolded Giju for always giving away food to men like that. Giju tried to explain that there was hair in the dish, but her mother pointed out the obvious. The hair didn't even match her own. She warned her daughter to stop covering for people like that. That was Hayeol's first impression of her. A fool, someone willing to take a loss just to protect others. Back in the present, Giju tugged him out of his thoughts, asking what was on his mind. He quickly apologized and paid for the items. They had their ice cream in hand, walking back. She asked what his first impression of her really was. She wanted to know what he had found lacking. After all, every time they met, she was caught in an embarrassing situation. Maybe the problem really was her. Hayeol didn't like that at all. He told her to stop saying things like that. There was nothing wrong with her. She was perfectly fine. She shouldn't be blaming herself for the actions of weird men. He added one more thing. He wanted to take back what he said earlier about her being smart. With that, he started walking ahead. After a few steps, he noticed she wasn't following and stopped. Why wasn't she coming? Giju didn't answer. All her life, people have made her feel like she was the problem. Yet here was this strange senior, someone who barely knew her, saying there was nothing wrong with her at all. And somehow that felt comforting. Touching, even. Giju suddenly started crying, which completely startled Hayeol. He rushed over, panicking, asking if something was wrong or if he had messed up again. Through her tears, Giju quickly reassured him. It wasn't that. She had just been caught off guard. Someone she least expected comforted her, and it moved her more than she realized. And then something strange happened. Out of nowhere, a glowing bar popped up in front of Hayeol. Giju blinked, stunned. Reading it made her jaw drop. It read, "Affection level increased." Affection level increased? What was this, a dating sim? And who exactly was writing this stuff? Before she could process that, another box appeared. This one announced, "New information about Hayeol." Giju stared, confused. Who even wanted this info? And what kind of update could it be? Her question was answered almost immediately. A new screen flashed up, revealing who Hayeol's next partner was going to be. And to her horror, the picture staring back at her was her own. Yep, according to whatever the system was, she was destined to be Hayeol's next partner. Enjoying this recap so far? Then don't forget to like, share, and drop a comment for part 2. Make sure you turn on the notification bell so you're the first to know when the next video drops. Until next time, ciao!